Hello YouTube. Today I want to talk with you about the topic of TRT. Now, I've never really expressed how I feel about pro bodybuilding, but you should, from the channel's name and from most of the videos I made about how to spot a fake natty, the reasons why you should be staying natural, that I am anti-PED to the max. I am 100% convinced that it's unnecessary in most cases and that you cannot justify its use with proper logic. That being said, I do watch pro bodybuilding, so I will eventually make a video expressing how I feel about it because my sentiments are sort of hypocritical when it comes to that. But once I tell you how I approach the discipline, I think you'll have a better understanding on where I come from. Today, though, it's going to be a different topic altogether because I want to stay away from pro bodybuilding. I don't want to discuss it. And I want to stay away from the reasons why you shouldn't go on TRT because I'm going to make separate videos for both because there's so much to say on the topic that if I made all of these subjects into one segment, it would be an hour long. And I want this one to stay below 40 minutes. So it's going to be long. I'm going to timestamp everything. I have a structure that I'm going to follow, so it's going to be easy to follow in terms of logic, and the arguments are going to make sense, they're going to be connected. But for your convenience, I'm going to timestamp everything. So the reason why I'm making this video is because TRT has now become the new lie of YouTube fitness. And if you've been on this platform for a while, you've seen it all. Eventually, I will make an history of the lies perpetuated by PED and PED users because I've seen everything, and TRT is the last installment. And I think a lot of people they understand that there's something fishy about it, but I've never really seen or heard anyone express everything in details and use logic for that and not just science or anecdotal evidence. So I just want to lay it out for you so that I give you what I see in my mind when I think about TRT and why I have such a huge issue with it. I actually have a bigger issue with TRT than I have with heavy steroid use because to me TRT is the continuation of the fake natty principles, right? It's just that the people who used to claim natural realized that at some point they don't fool anyone anymore, so they had to jump on another excuse, which is TRT. So I'm going to get started, and before I get started I will define the term TRT because semantics are important, and you will see that they are important because the people who use that lie abuse semantics, meaning that they do play on words. Ils jouent avec les mots, like we say in my language, meaning that they use certain phrases, certain sentences to put some images, some feelings into your mind without having to express them themselves, so that they can't always back off and say, oh, I never said that. I just said a word and you interpreted that as X. That's important. So for me, I'm going to tell you what TRT is and TRT isn't because it's going to be the basis of my argument. What is TRT? TRT is testosterone replacement therapy, also called HRT, and you'll see that the fact that there is two appellations is important. So this is going to be a protocol that is going to be used for males, so you need to be born a male, and it's going to be only in cases where it has been established that normal testosterone boost or hormonal profile ameliorations cannot be done, and you need to inject an outside source of test for that individual to be healthy. Just by saying that, I disqualified 99% of all people on YouTube Fitness who use TRT because, and I don't want to get into it now, but the amount of cases where TRT is justified is extremely low, okay? And there are multiple reasons for that, as I said, but this is for me what TRT is, right? So if you fall outside of that, then you shouldn't be going on TRT. There are other things for you to do instead of just pinning for the rest of your life. Now, what TRT is, for the most part, when someone says I'm on TRT, is people who abuse steroids, destroyed their hormonal profile, and now have to take PEDs to be able to keep building muscle and be healthy. People who have low T don't want to work on it and just want to pin because it's much easier. Or people who straight up lie, are doing heavy cycles, but they cover themselves by saying, I'm just on TRT. And I will explain why all of these lies impact the way people think about the discipline of bodybuilding differently and the use that they have, because it's quite interesting. What fascinates me the most about this is that it really shows how good people are at finding excuses for themselves and how cunning they can really be with language. So I'm going to get into that. So this is for the semantics, so that you know where I'm coming from. My definition of TRT is quite narrow. The difference between low T for health and muscles. So the justification of TRT is that for the most part, TRT is supposed to help psychologically and from a health point perspective, meaning that most people who are legitimately on TRT didn't jump on it to build muscle. That's a byproduct of TRT. It was never the main goal. The goal was to prevent heart disease, because men with low T get heart disease, prevent depression, and prevent any type of degeneration that might come from having a low mood, having too much adipose tissue from the fat retention that low T promotes in men. And that also results in more muscle mass. But I'm going to bump into that thing a lot. But the goal, your doctor never prescribed you TRT and said, you're going to get jacked out of this. The goal was for health to be improved. And you see that in YouTube fitness, it's the exact opposite. Those guys don't care about the health aspects of it. They will pretend to care so as to look healthy and conscious about their body, but in reality, they do that for muscle gains. So that's a big discrepancy that needs to be addressed. As far as the value of TRT, what is TRT? I'm not going to cite numbers because, as I said, this is not a science video, but it is fairly well established that TRT is going to replicate a normal hormonal production. TRT, your doctor, a real doctor, and we'll get into that, will never prescribe you 2 times the amount of tests than a natural born male produces, ever. They'll either give you the low range of the natural production or they'll give you the medium range. Most of the time they give you the low range, okay? And that's an important thing to establish right now, because anyone who takes more than that is not on TRT. Even if it's prescribed by a doctor, it is not TRT anymore. It's PED use, because you are using supraphysiological levels of hormone. A natural body would never produce as much hormone, especially when you consider the fact that TRT injections keep the hormone level stable. When you're natty, the hormones do this. They fluctuate because it's your body who regulates it. When you inject it, it's stable, so it's already a massive difference. So if you take 2 people, and one on average produces 150 milligrams, and the other gets injected at 150 milligrams, the person who gets a 150 from a syringe is going to make better gains, because their hormone levels is more stable, so their hormonal profile is anabolic all the time. Now take the same difference, double the amount of milligrams, and you realize that this is not TRT. This cannot be described as TRT because it is going to produce muscle gains on a level that is completely unrelatable to anything a natural could accomplish. So that is also something to be said, because guarantee you, all of these guys who say they're on TRT and they're massive, they don't take TRT doses. They're way above TRT doses. We're going to also get into the pathological reasons of TRT use. You see, I'm personally not too keen on accepting the fact that people who have no pathologies use TRT. If you don't have any of the issues associated with low T, why are you boosting it, right? And a lot of the time, these guys are going to say, oh, it's because I don't make gains fast enough. Well, that's not a justification for TRT. I know a lot of guys are going to push back and say it's way too hard to get TRT. It's hard for a reason. I know we like to dislike doctors and distrust them, but they know what they're doing. When you show up with low T, but you're still in the normal range, and your doc tells you no to TRT, He's not doing that to be a jerk. He's not doing that to steal your gains. He just knows that there are better ways for you to boost your T. He's not going to teach it to you, it's up to you to research, but he doesn't want you to jump on a chemical crutch for the rest of your life. And for people who complain about that, think about the fact that most of the time we tend to complain about the opposite. We complain when doctors give pills for no reason. Look at the painkiller epidemic. That's what happened. People showed up with a little bit of pain and they were given painkillers and they became addicted to opioids. You're doing the exact same thing with your TRT use. You're making yourself addicted to a substance you could have done without, and that's terrible. You can always fix the environment, and I want to detail it on the channel because people don't believe it for some reason. If you have low T and you're still in the natural range, and you're young, why don't you try and fix it? Instead of starting pinning at 22-year-olds, fix yourself. See if your body cannot be more anabolic. I'm sure it can. It's designed to be anabolic. You have destroyed your body for a long time, but it can still recover. And we're going to get into that when I talk about the next point, which is the issue with that promotion of TRT is that it's switched its meaning within the heads of young men. Young men who could have been sensitized to the use of PEDs and realized that it was not a good thing are now jumping on TRT. Why? Because it's presented to them as being healthy. It's like a healthy option. It's healthy steroids. I know it sounds stupid, but for a lot of people, that's what it is. In their brain, that's how they perceive it. And the issue with this is that when you're young, especially if you're below 25, you haven't even glanced the anabolic properties of your body yet, especially if you live in a toxic environment. Young men who spent their teen years playing video games, eating junk, never exercising, never taking the sun, drinking tap water, and then who start working out and within 1 year make no gains and say, oh, it's because I have low T. Well, yes, you just completely burnt out your hormonal profile by being the equivalent of a human slug. And then you pick up a weight and you don't blow up inside and you somehow blame your body. You did that to the body. And I'm not pointing a finger, I am literally but not figuratively, because I did the same thing. My lifestyle was not conducive to muscle gains when I was younger. And the more I age, the more independent I become, the more I am able to really handle my body and give it the pure environment it deserves, the more I am rewarded in terms of anabolic hormonal profile because I get bigger and bigger. But the issue is that if you jump on TRT, you are stealing yourself the ability, you're robbing yourself of the ability of ever accomplishing that. And that's awful. And also, keep in mind that TRT use at the dosages that these people take is going to replace the need for training because you're going to get big no matter what you do. Because the use of test is going to make you big. You're going to gain muscle like this. So you're never going to learn how to train, how to program. And then what happens to these guys? They get stuck because the only way through plateaus is programmation and it's hard work. So if you don't have that, what do you have left? Well, more drugs. And since they've already been on TRT and they're way above what normal TRT is, they'll just up the dose. And I want to discuss it in length, but how many of these guys who take TRT and who massively fluctuate in size actually stay stable when it comes to their injections? How many of these guys do you think actually double the dose once in a while just to get a little taste of glory here and there and still claim to be on TRT? Way too many. So in a sense, I would call TRT a getaway drug because you're going to start with TRT, fooling yourself into thinking you're being healthy, and then you're going to just up the dose until the point where you just become a drug user and you're just using PEDs straight up. And the worst part is that these people will still find ways to justify in their heads that they're using TRT. I'm sorry, a deca base with test, tren, and some orals is not TRT. But you're going to see that some people are going to claim that. Some people who are taking those products and those amounts already claim that. And as you notice, I don't cite any name because I don't really care for the drama at all. But you will know the type of people I'm talking about. It's quite easy to guess. And now, talking about these people, I have a question for them. If TRT is enough to stay big and jacked, why did these people do heavy cycles in the first place? All of these guys who used to be pro, who we know ran grams of stuff, some of which will lie about the amount they used to take because they want to be able to pretend that it's their supreme genetics and their work ethic that got them there, even though it's the fact that they managed to somehow survive the insane amounts of PEDs they ingested. How is it that they somehow manage to maintain the size that they used to have when on grams of stuff with 100 milligrams of test? That makes no sense. It's as if you got to 20 inches arms, right? Doing a ton of volume for the bicep, and then you cut down the volume from 100 to 1, and your biceps just remain the same size. Would that make sense? After 3 years of no bicep training, don't you think your arms would shrink? Yeah, they would. Same for PEDs. That makes no sense. All of those guys who claim minimal TRT dosage, it's just completely against logic, and for the most part, people see through it, but there are always people who fall into the trap, and to me, it's so evident that it's just lies upon lies. And you'll see that with that dilemma, there's two possibilities. Either they lie, meaning that they took heavy cycles and then eventually they cruised for the rest of their life on heavy doses of test and they're actually not doing TRT at all. Or they don't lie and they're actually maintaining the insane amounts of muscles they built with their heavy drug use with only 100 grams of test, in which case the question is, why did you take those drugs in the first place? Or if you've taken those drugs and you maintain with this, why are you claiming that people can get jacked like you? Because in reality, the only thing that built the muscle was the heavy drug use. It's not the TRT. The TRT is maintaining what the heavy drug use built. So for people who just skip the heavy drug use and jump on TRT, they're never going to get anything because they don't have anything to maintain. See the logic behind it? We're going to get deeper into that. The reason why they take it, for the most part, the justification they give when it comes to TRT and drug use and PED use is that they did it because they met their natty limit. Now, I made a video talking about the natty limit and the fact that it doesn't exist. I suggest you check it out. But when it comes to TRT, I think, and that's the reason why I'm sort of, speaking up, even though it's not going to do anything, but I do think that it might change the mind of some people who are thinking about TRT in their head because they think they met a limit. As I explained, your limit might just be that you're not anabolic enough yet. You will be in the future if you keep at it, if you train, if you take care of yourself. So that's already something that is not an argument at all. And then you have the people who think that the limit is a hard stop and can only be broken with drugs. And to these people, I would say, consider the fact that you're completely wrong. And also consider the fact that all of the guys you see on TRT that you think you're going to be able to achieve and you aspire to look like, they didn't build all of that muscle on TRT. They built it on tren. You're not going to take tren. So why do you think that it's somehow going to get you the gains that you want? And then you have the people, and you will know who I'm talking about here, but you have the people who trained naturally for a while, who got a good body, and then jumped on PEDs, and their explanation is, oh, it's because I couldn't potentially progress anymore. That's a straight up lie. What they couldn't do, however, is actually compete on a pro stage, because I promote natural bodybuilding, but natural bodybuilding cannot exist on the same stage as pro bodybuilding, because it's like putting a man in a cage to fight a tiger. The man will not win. I don't care how disciplined the man is, the man will not win. You cannot compete as a natural against people who take drugs. It's not possible. It's like fighting against cyborgs, and those guys know it. So they made the sacrifice of taking drugs, of limiting their lifespan, or of damaging their health. But now they try to flip it around and say, oh, no. It's not because of that. It's because of my own personal development. I wanted to progress and I couldn't. That's, again, a lie. Your progression as a natural, spiritually and as terms of physical development, is infinite. You don't need to blow up and be 260 and ripped to be able to feel accomplished as a man. If you want to compete, however, you do need that. And the thing too with these guys is that once their career ends, they need something to make money because they're not winning shows anymore and shows don't pay anything. Some of them used to sell supplements, but now supplements don't really sell anymore, or you need to have big contracts, you need to be a big name. And people have become very skeptical of supplement companies, which is very good because it's for the most part crap. So they need something else to make money out of. So what most of these guys have turned towards is coaching, selling training plans, selling nutrition plan. The issue is if you admit that you built your size on drugs, how you sell those things? I mean, you're not going to send a package with TRT in the package to the people who buy your crap. So you're going to have to come up with something else. And the something else is usually by claiming that you got to that size mostly through your knowledge, which is again a complete fabrication and a lie. And the best thing about that too is that once these guys retire, they can just claim TRT. Because who cares, right? They're not competing, they can just claim TRT, and they can, that way, they don't really have to express it verbally, but it's a subtle message. They say, oh, I'm just taking 100 milligrams and look how I look. It's because of my knowledge. So buy my product, buy my overpriced product. All of that is hinged around the TRT fallacy, and this is why this needs to be explained and expressed. And also, I personally think, and that's not popular, but people who gave up on the natural way because they couldn't make progress anymore shouldn't be giving training advice to naturals. And since naturals make up 99% of YouTube fitness, you realize that they would have no one to talk to. And there are certain people I respect who take drugs and who still give good training advice, some of them. But for the most part, it's going to be about exercise selection, injury prevention. In terms of programmation, if you're natural, be very careful because these guys tend to give pretty crap advice. I've said crap 3 times in this video. We're going to continue here. Hormonal evolution, I've already spoke about that, but because it sort of destroys the entire notion of a natty limit, I don't want to dwell on that too much, there's still too much to talk about. I also think that these people, they misrepresent TRT because you won't get as big as them, and they still cycle. So the nature of steroid cycles is an interesting one because it has a snowball effect. I want to talk about that in another video, but usually people start with PEDs, they start with their first cycle and they tell themselves, after that one, I'm done. I will do my PCT to restore my hormonal profile and then I'm done. It never works like that because you become addicted to the easy gains. So what do? You do your PCT, then you do a cycle again, PCT, cycle again. And at some point, these guys just say, you know what? I don't want to do a PCT again. I'll just cruise for the rest of my life. Who cares? I want to be big. So now they do what is called a blast and cruise, which is basically, it's TRT if you take the blast away, because a blast and cruise is really just a period of time where you take a lot of drugs and a period of time where you take less drugs to maintain the heavy drug use. So basically what people do when they say, oh, I used to do PEDs, now I'm on TRT, they are basically in that maintaining phase. Okay, and that's an important notion because you will see that the two cannot exist without one another. If there was never heavy drug use, the TRT will not have the properties that it has for these guys. And if there was no TRT, the heavy drug use wouldn't even exist anymore because the gains would waste away. That's important. I don't know if I'm going to mention it in the video or not, but TRT is not natty. I think it goes without saying, but I still hear people who claim that. TRT is not natty even if you've never taken steroids before, right? I don't care how much you take. The second something that is not indigenous to your body enters your body in terms of hormonal replacement, you're not natty. Let's say you have a normal production of test and you inject 50 milligrams like an idiot. You're still not natty. And that's for life. You messed up. Your natty card is revoked. And for people who took heavy drugs and now are just on TRT and who claim natty because they have the same level of test than a natural, I've explained that before, it doesn't work like that. That's not natural. So some people somehow try to make their way through the natty world by claiming that. Doesn't work like that. And as far as the cycle things go, I expressed that before, but I personally don't buy into the TRT explanation that these guys give. I'm sure that they take much more than they actually claim they do. It's like the legends of the past. All of these big bodybuilders who tend to have sort of a moral obligation to display the amount of stuff that they took because they don't want their legends to be soiled. They want people to believe that they achieved all of that through hard work alone. Well, there was hard work involved, no doubt. There was great genetics and work ethic, but without the drugs, would that have happened? Without all of the drugs? Because these guys took a ton of drugs. Because in competitive environments, people are going to take the edge. Always. Always. And it's the reason why pro bodybuilding is becoming what it is today. It's a chemical welfare. So, as far as those guys who claim TRT, same thing. If you show the real doctor their blood work, the doctor will tell you that's not TRT level, that's way above TRT, this is not healthy. And that segues into my next point. TRT is not healthy, or at least not the way those people do it. TRT, when prescribed by a real doctor, at low doses is healthy because it's replacing something that should be there, right? Your 500 milligrams shouldn't be there. This is 3 times what a natural produces. It's way too much. It cannot be healthy. Just calling something TRT doesn't make it healthy. It doesn't work like that. But these people are completely matrixed in their head, and some of them, they know that they're killing themselves. Others, they realize that it's really detrimental to their health, but they still do it to sell things because they're addicted to the gains, because they're addicted to the drug, because it's addictive psychologically. So all of that to say that whole thing, that whole semantic of TRT and HRT is really just a way for these guys to pass off what they're doing as being a health option, right? There's PEDs and there's TRT. PEDs is bad, it's bad for you, and TRT is good. Those are the same products. You're still injecting tests, and sometimes they inject it at the same level. Just changing the name doesn't make it better. When you do the injection, whether you say I'm doing steroids or I'm doing TRT, it doesn't change the fact that it's going to damage your kidneys, your liver, your heart. It's still the same drugs that enter the body. And that is something young men need to consider before they get sucked in the semantics of these guys who try to present what they're doing, their poor choices, as being something that doctors are going to recommend. Doctors don't recommend TRT, not at that level. So, as far as the heavy cycles go, you also need to consider the fact that even by taking heavy cycles, even those guys who take heavy cycles and they become massive and they're on the Olympia stage, it takes them years. Why? Because you can't, people talk about that all the time, it's sort of a meme at this point. It's not just injecting test and you become huge. It's exposition of test over time and other substances that get you huge because the muscles soak into that. If you think about it from a tonnage perspective, that's what it is. You're exposing your body to immense amounts of tonnage and it responds by growing and growing. The same logic applies to naturals. As your test level grows, even if the augmentation is slow, the time your body spends in it grows with time. It's something that is a perfectly valid reasoning when it comes to explaining why there's no natural limit. It's the same for PED users, except that they get 500 times the amount of hormones that you get, so they get much bigger than you faster. And that's the entire thing with PEDs too. PEDs make you gain faster, so fast that you enter a realm of chronological application of tonnage that it's just not replicable for natural. That's what people don't get. That's why you will never look like these guys. You don't have the time. They inject months and years of training into their bloodstream. You can't do that. This is the reason why you can never hope to match them. And again, same logic. If it took you years to build your physique on train and all of that good stuff, how is it that you maintain without all of your substances after that? It makes no sense. Because in the same vein, if you take someone, you put them on PEDs, and then you make them do a perfect PCT cycle and they go back to their normal hormonal profile, they will shrink. So how do you explain that this doesn't happen to these guys? You know why? Because they're lying. As far as the perpetuation, I already said that's the endless cycles. So basically, the issue with that PED use is that if people were open about it, it would be no problem. Look at Rich Piana. The guy had a massive drug abuse problem, but he was open and people loved him for it because he didn't try to utilize that to sell things, to sell programs or supplements. He was just doing his thing. Yes, he sold things, he made millions of dollars, but he was genuine about it. And all of these other guys aren't. They take drugs because they know it's going to get them fame, it's going to get them far, and eventually they monetize their drug use, and they have to lie about it because, as I explained, if they didn't lie, people would just not buy their stuff. I've explained that before. They lie to protect their businesses because people would abandon their products if they realize that all of the results they get is from the drugs. I also wrote here that it's also a normalization of drug use, and that's true. I don't think, yeah. So basically, people were complaining because doctors weren't really willing to give TRT to men for the reasons I explained. So we have youth clinics now that exist that will basically give you whatever you want as long as you pay. They will give you growth hormone as long as you pay. Even if you're 35, they don't care. They'll find a reason. Oh, you're fatigued. Let me give you something for that fatigue. As long as you pay, they'll have perfectly customized measures to explain why you need 500 milligrams of test. So that, to me, that's really not TRT. If it comes from those youth clinics, it's not TRT. It's legalized drug use because it's taxable, so no one is going to come after it. That's pretty taboo to speak about, but that's the reason why it exists. A real doctor will never prescribe you those doses. No human on earth needs those doses to be healthy. It's not possible. You're not a horse. And also, most of them, they're not even old enough for TRT because, and I'm going to get into that, but a lot of what TRT is either young men who are really unlucky and their hormonal profile never really kicked off and they need the drugs, or else they're not healthy, and that's fine. That's rare, okay? If you're young, fix yourself first before you do that. But for the most part, it's old men. It's men who are in their 70s, their 80s, they don't produce enough tests to be healthy and have vitality, so they get prescribed it. That's fine, again, because it replaces something that should be here, and it's beneficial for them. Not when you're 25, not when you're 35 or 40 or even 50. Now that's drug use, that's not TRT. You should still be anabolic at that age, okay? I'm going to explain why they're not anabolic, but the funny part about that is, it's ironic. They're not old enough to take TRT, but the TRT is going to make them old enough soon because they're either going to die from the use or it is going to age them so much that they're eventually going to look their age, if that makes sense. Because anabolism is what makes you age as a man, it's what makes you look older, and it's a good thing for naturals because it makes you more attractive in general. But when you abuse the substance because it's not your body producing it, you just end up looking like an apple, like covered with wrinkles, and you're like 45. What's going on here? That's not normal. Okay, that's the drug use. And we're going to get into the real juicy stuff here, and some people might not agree with me on that. That's just the way I approach the wood when it comes to that, but they destroyed their own hormonal profile with their drug use, and now they're on TRT. It bothers me. Why? It bothers me because TRT is supposed to be reserved for people who need it, and by a lack of luck, were handed a bad hand and need that desperately to be able to survive. Now, I'm not saying that we're going to run out of tests anytime soon, but in terms of just value, personally, it bothers me. It bothers me that guys who had something that was perfectly functional, their body was doing everything right, they produced enough tests to be muscular as a natural, they decided that it was not enough, and now that the body is completely broken down, they take TRT and they expect us to feel pity for them. Some of them, they try to pass it off as, oh, my body is not working, I need the TRT. How pathetic do you need to be to try and pass down those lies? This is insane for so many reasons. Even because the worst part is that for the most part, these guys would potentially even still be healthy. They just wouldn't be able to maintain their insane mass if they didn't keep doing the drugs. So they have to be on TRT. It doesn't even save their life. It's insulting. It's just plainly insulting. If someone destroyed their liver on purpose, okay, and then got a liver replacement or was begging for a new liver, would you feel pity for that person? They did that to themselves. You destroyed your own body. Why are you crying for a new one now? You don't deserve one. You tried to burn the candle super fast and now you want a new candle? No. There's just no. This is not just. There's an injustice in that. And I think a lot of people feel the same about TRT. They just never verbalize it. But that's the reason why it personally really upsets me. If you want to do heavy drug use and die by the time you're 45, that's on you. But don't complain and whine to your audience about that later and try to present it as something you have to do. Oh, I have to do TRT or else I'm not going to be able to survive. Well, that's what you get. For your behavior, for what you've done, that's what you get. There's always retributions in life, and these people try to dodge the retribution. And not only that, they want to pretend as if the retributions were not needed or earned in any way, and that's not okay. I also wrote insurance fraud. That's not really in the question because TRT is not really reimbursed. That being said, picture a world where TRT is reimbursed and those guys jump on it. How would you feel about that? That your money goes to pay for the drug use of people who destroy their own hormonal profile. I personally am not for that. We only have 3 points left. I have no voice. Okay? Oh, this is the one that's funny too. See, the reason why they have to so desperately lie about that topic is because if they stopped taking those heavy TRT doses, they would shrink. And that's just the honest truth. They would shrink. They would disappear. And if they stopped taking drugs altogether, they wouldn't even look like they lived. And if you don't believe me, check the transformations of pro bodybuilders who have to stop because of a doctor's order. And I mean a doctor who came to them and told them, continue doing this and you'll die. You need to come off the drugs or you'll die. Look at what they look like. They're like this. You know why? Because not only do you kill your body's ability to produce enough hormone to be jacked, but you also damage the ability of the body to even produce anything in the first place. Those guys who've been on drugs for 10 years, you think their body would be able to pick it up if they stopped? No amount of PCT will help them pick it up. So they won't, it's not even that they'll be small, it's that they will have no test production whatsoever. So they'll completely disappear. And the speed at which they would lose the muscle that they have, you wouldn't even believe how fast. It would melt off of their bones. And it's the reason why they so desperately keep hanging onto that TRT, because they know that it's their last saving grace. Because how do you sell a program when your arms look like a wrist? You can't, it's not possible. So you have to stay on the drug. And there's also a Stockholm syndrome attached to that. That's all drugs do that to people. You start taking something that's bad for you, but you're so in love with it that you start to intellectualize the use of the drug and you explain it. That's the entire story of TRT. They will always find a way to express why it's good. You have now advocates for people who tell young men to jump on TRT if they have even the lowest of tests and it's just bad. And these people should be ashamed of themselves because they're going to hurt a lot of people. Its scope, as I explained, it's to protect their image or career, because without PEDs, all of that would not survive, because people will not take advice from people who are small. And it's the same on this channel. If I lost 30 pounds, you wouldn't take advice from me, and that's fine, because it means that I wouldn't be able to exemplify what I teach you, and in that case, why am I even teaching anything if I cannot apply it in my own life for my own body? What I just say, apply it to them. Why are you taking advice from people who were not able to achieve any level of inspiring muscularity without the PED use? Do you want to jump on PEDs? If that's the case, then take advice from them. But if you don't, they didn't manage to get to where they are with their own advice. So why would you? TRT will not undo years of abuse. So that's for the health thing. That goes without saying, but I've never heard anyone actually express it. If you've done drug abuse for years, and now you stop and you don't produce hormones, yes, the lack of hormones can trigger some health consequences. That being said, the health damage created by the heavy drug use is not just magically going away. So all of these guys who are now on TRT and they claim to be healthy, nope. You've been a pro bodybuilder for 10 years, you're not healthy, not possible. And I think that deep down it scares them, because I have people in my life who are like this, who abuse substances, not necessarily PEDs, but certain substances, and who have the intimate conviction that it's going to kill them. That's what's going to kill them. And for the most part, it also applies to you. What is going to kill you is something you've already indulged in and you are currently indulging in right now. It's a vice that you have. But that thing is not going to just, strike you dead as you do it. Like, you're not going to smoke a cig and it's going to kill you. But the accumulation of the cigarettes you smoke is what's going to kill you, even if you give it up. And that's a regret that people cannot let go of because it's stupid, right? It's just point blank stupid. I've done it before. For me, it's diet. I've done things diet-wise that were idiotic, and I wish I could go back in time and kick myself in the face, but I can't. I have to live with that. And I know that the damage I've done is there. It doesn't go away. It cannot be repaired. It's there. It's a debt that I will have to pay sooner or later. And the debt that these guys have to pay is immense because the drug use that they indulge in is what's going to kill them. None of them will live to actually die of old age. It's not possible. They're all going to die of something. Heart attack, liver failure, cancer, all of that is in their future. And the worst part is they're making it worse because they keep taking heavy TRT doses, which feeds the disease that's going to kill them. But they can't let go. For the reasons I explained, they are prisoners of the drug use because they are drug addicts. And it's the Stockholm syndrome that is so dangerous. It's the reason why I preach on this channel, please never touch those drugs, please. And I'm going to leave you with that. I just want to point out the last thing too. You will have noticed on YouTube Fitness a certain trend, a recent trend of people who downsize. Huge mass monsters, people who are like 270 who now want to be smaller. And why do they want to be smaller? Well, they present that as being an aesthetic choice. It's, oh, I think it'll look better. Nonsense. It's because their doctors told them, look, you're going to die in 5 years. So you either stop that or you die. And the issue is that they cannot just stop. They have to slowly downgrade because they're addicted, which, when you get sober, it's tough to quit cold turkey. It can actually be very dangerous for you. So they slowly try and stop, but it's not going to undo the years of damage, as I explained. This is why you stay natty, bros. This is why you stay natty. TRT, PED use, stay away from it. You don't need it. 99% of the time, people who are on TRT, they don't even deserve being on that TRT. They shouldn't be on it. Do things the natural way and you will be rewarded. Please do not succumb to the dark side. And if you're on this channel, I'm going to keep preaching that for you because if I can save one person, then that's worth it. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.